There are worrying signs that are coming in from the Indian economy. The signs have been there for the last couple of months, more than the last couple of months. Now, this worry is being articulated by some of the top economists in the country. The NITI Aayog chief is saying this is an unprecedented crisis in the financial sector in the last 70 years. The Prime Minister's Economic Council member is now calling for major reforms. The Finance Minister is asking Indian industry to abstain from causing panic. They are asking industries to put out exact data on job cuts. I'm going straight across to Shireen Bhan, who is joining us on the phone line. Shireen, we've all been hearing for a while that there's been a slowdown across sectors. People are losing their jobs across sectors. But now you have someone like the NITI Aayog chief who's ringing the alarm bell. Just how bad are things?
Look, I think it is important to distinguish between different sectors. The experience across different sectors varies. Now, yes, there is a slowdown that the Indian economy is faced with, and there is a slowdown for different reasons. In some sectors, it could be on account of cyclical reasons, but there is a larger malaise that has impacted the Indian economy for the last several quarters. I think what the NITI Aayog Vice Chairman is alluding to in that event where CNBC TV18 is the exclusive media partner, is that there is a crisis of confidence. You know, all through last year, we heard that there was a liquidity crisis, that there was no money in the system. What we are now seeing is that banks are actually returning money to the Reserve Bank of India. So the credit offtake is a problem, and that is where this business of why private investment isn't picking up, why after, you know, all this talk about unleashing the animal spirits of the Indian economy, that is not happening. So the crisis of confidence is an issue which the NITI Aayog Vice Chairman is talking about when he says that there is no trust between the government and the private sector. There is no trust between the private sector and the private sector. So how do you expect investments to take off in an environment where there is a crisis of confidence? And I think that is a larger issue that needs to be addressed. Now, let's talk about the issue of a stimulus, because again, remember that this has been something that has been spoken of over the past 1 month. The finance minister has had meetings and consultations with every sector. One would imagine that, you know, there is a fresh budget in the making. But let's also be very clear that the government has limited fiscal headroom. And if you heard what the chief economic advisor told me in his interview yesterday, and that is his view, a final decision on what measures, etc., will be announced is still awaited. But the thinking within government is clear at this point in time that you have limited fiscal headroom. And so the expectation of a big bang fiscal stimulus package of the government throwing money at every sector is perhaps a little unwarranted at this point in time. That is not to suggest that measures will not be taken, but our understanding is that there will be calibrated relief measures that will be announced. These will be sector-specific measures that will be announced. But, you know, this whole approach that the government is suddenly going to start throwing money by way of rate cuts, etc., for all sectors is not something that we should take for granted. Finally, it is a political call, and if the Prime Minister chooses to do so, well, then the Prime Minister chooses to do so. But at this point in time, this is the thinking within various quarters of government that, look, you need to keep in mind the situation as far as your tax collections are concerned. You need to be mindful of the fiscal deficit, because remember, if the government were to borrow more, then what is the point of the Reserve Bank bringing down interest rates, because that is going to be negated by the fact that the government is borrowing more. So these are things that the government will have to be mindful of. And at the end of the day, as I pointed out, it is a political call and a political decision. And that's what we're given to understand, that the decision will be taken at the Prime Minister's office.
You know, we are seeing Nirmala Sitharaman on our screens as we speak, Shireen. The Finance Minister has asked India Inc. to abstain from causing panic. Has India Inc. already pressed the panic button? Because she's saying, look, everyone's talking about job cuts right now. Please put out exact data, because if you don't, that is what is causing panic.
Well, I don't think that the government can say, give us the data, etc. Look, is there, do some industries exaggerate the impact? Of course they do. But the fact of the matter is that the government says that we are holding consultations with different sectors to understand what your problems are. So if industry is coming out and saying these are our problems and if you don't address it, this is what is going to happen, well, then that's part of the consultation process. But let's be very clear. I mean, part of any negotiation is give and take, and part of any negotiation there will be some amount of exaggeration that will happen. But that is not to say that there isn't pain or discomfort that sectors are faced with. But as I said, there are different problems specific to different sectors. A lot of sectors are talking about the GST rates being too high. But, these are the GST rates that have now been in play for the last 2 years. So we have to be mindful of this. The GST collections are still running below the required run rate. We're barely getting to the 1 lakh crore rupee monthly number when the asking rate is 1 lakh 14. So the government also has to be able to balance its books. So as I said, where will they want to move? Which sectors do they believe require relief? Where will they spend the money? I think these are going to be the decisions that the government will eventually take. But again, I go back to the conversation with the chief economic advisor that I had, where he was very clear that, look, you need to focus on driving investment. Now, government spending so far has been driving investment because private sector spending hasn't taken off. So with limited fiscal headroom, how much can the government also do on the investment front is a question. We're talking about a situation today where the national carrier, Air India, are saying that they are not being supplied fuel by another PSU, by an oil marketing company run by the government. So Air India is saying that, look, we don't have money to pay our liabilities and to even pay for our fuel. The outstanding fuel bill, the oil marketing companies are asking for payment. So there is, the government has many checks to write. The question now is, which ones will it choose to write at this point in time?
All right, Shireen Bhan, we leave it there. Always good to get you on the show and always good to get your perspective. Thank you very much. We've also heard from Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairperson of the NITI Aayog, saying that unprecedented steps are needed to resolve a situation that is clearly out of the ordinary. Let's listen into him.
This is an unprecedented situation in our economy, and we have not grappled with this before. We are trying to grapple with this. We will come up with solutions. Some of that has already happened in the budget. The rest, as far as I can make out, the banks, by the way, have been, they have prevented. You must remember, they have prevented any NBFC from going belly up. And nearly something like 2.5 lakh crore of funds have been diverted to the NBFCs. Yes, they have resulted also in the banks picking up the assets from the NBFCs. The balance sheet size have reduced, but nonetheless, they have prevented any mortality since the IL&FS times, when many were expected.
जिस किस्म का उन्होंने बजट दिया है, इसका मतलब साफ जाहिर है कि उनको चिंता भी नहीं है, क्योंकि इस सरकार को चिंता तो अलग चीज़ों की है ना, कि किसी तरीके से किसी को अंदर किया जाए, ऑपोजिशन को, राज ठाकरे हो चाहे कोई और हो, क्योंकि ये तो चाहते हैं कि ये खबरें चले, और जो खबर असली खबर है देश की, जिसमें सुधार आना चाहिए हमारी आर्थिक स्थिति में, वो खबर आती ही नहीं है.